Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This week, I am delighted to welcome Matt Hochberg, creator of the Royal Caribbean blog. My first direct involvement with Matt was when I featured him in my first book, The Joy of Cruising, in a section called Cruise Bloggers, The Reader's Choice, comprised of finalists and winners in the 10 Best Reader's Choice Best Cruise Blogger, sponsored by USA Today. Matt won for the Royal Caribbean blog. Royal Caribbean blog originated in 2010, and the accompanying podcast is now up to 500 episodes. And today is indisputably the leading unofficial source for all things Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. To say he dominates his space is an understatement. The Royal Caribbean blog YouTube channel is the second most popular cruise channel in the world, with 235,000 subscribers. Its blog is the third most visited in the world, and the Royal Caribbean blog podcast is a consensus top 3 in the world. All the more amazing when you consider Royal Caribbean blog exclusively covers a single cruise line. How popular and influential is Matt's brand? Well, search Royal Caribbean and one of the top results, generally the first result after Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, will be Matt's blog. He has become almost synonymous with the cruise line. I mentioned my first direct involvement with Matt was his inclusion in the Joy of Cruising. However, I became real familiar with Matt well prior to that. After sailing my first cruise ever on Royal Caribbean Sovereign of the Seas, the world's largest ship, in 1988, I got hooked and sailed many cruises in the ensuing years. But believe it or not, I didn't return to Royal for 30 years. And then I booked Anthem of the Seas in 2018, which turned out to be the start of the Joy of Cruising series. Well, Matt's podcast was my first stop for my research. Matt, welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you, Paul, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
So how you doing? How's your family?
Doing real well, thank you. Everyone's doing well. We're getting ready for our next cruise coming up on the West Coast, going to Navigator the Seas out of Los Angeles. So something a little different, not the usual Caribbean stuff. So looking forward to that.
So you just got back from what sounds like a great cruise. I followed you on social media. It involved Europe. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I took my first European cruise. I went to Norway. It was a Norwegian fjords cruise out of Southampton. Never done a European cruise at all. And so this was kind of a neat experience for me because obviously I've never done it, a whole new part of the world. And I, like a lot of people, I think, was very curious as to how it compared and how it was different. And, obviously you get some similarities, some areas in North America, primarily Alaska, but, it was different enough that it really felt like a completely different adventure. And it was just eye-opening how much there is to do. And that kind of, I think, whet my appetite for more European cruises, Paul, because, there's all these different places to visit. And once you start expanding your horizons a little bit, it's addictive. You start getting like, oh, what if I went to here, here, and here, and here as well? It's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Now, I heard you say Norway. What was your itinerary?
It was a 7-night Norwegian fjords cruise. Went to Haugesund, Geiranger, Olden, and Bergen.
Okay. Yeah, I did my first European cruise in October, but it was the Mediterranean.
Yeah, I would like to do the Mediterranean at some point. I also have an aversion to being hot and sweaty, which I can get plenty of here in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I want to go somewhere that I'm not going to get, I live in Florida. I want to escape from the summer weather. So I was like, you know what? Norway sounds fantastic. And it was like high temperatures in the low 50s. So it was exactly what the doctor ordered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We just got back from an Alaska cruise and, I thought we were going to get away from the Caribbean weather, and we mostly did. But there was one day it was in Ketchikan. People were in short sleeve shirts.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works, especially in Alaska, where you think you have this imagery in your head of like, parkas and just like really bundled up, and it can be like that sometimes, but more often than not, it's more like jeans and t-shirt kind of weather.
Yep. So I shared some background with our listeners. Fill us in on some details. Where you from? How'd you get involved with blogging and podcasting? Anything you would like to share?
Yeah, so I grew up in Connecticut, and then I moved to Florida after we got married, right before we got married, actually. And cruising, like I think a lot of people, was something we did like once a year, and it was really cool, and it was a nice family vacation. And living in Florida, we started, cruising a little bit more. But what really got me into the whole blogging world was Oasis of the Seas. When Royal Caribbean debuted the Oasis class, it really caught a lot of people's attention. I had been cruising with Disney Cruise Line, but they were getting pretty expensive. And we were also intrigued by the Oasis class. So we're like, okay, well, let's try a different line and let's try the world's largest cruise ship. Let's see what it's all about. And we were amazed by not only Oasis of the Seas and everything that was there, but we also really liked the Royal Caribbean product. And that really kind of attracted us. We're like, well, we like Disney, but they're getting super pricey. What if we started going more on Royal Caribbean? Mm-hmm. And that was the impetus, if you will, to start all this. Because then I thought to myself, well, I'm so excited for my Oasis cruise. Let me start a blog about it, just to share my excitement. It was an outlet, really. And I kind of was like, oh, RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com is available. Cool, let's just do that. Like, I didn't have any master plan. It was just like, I'm going to post something there. Mm-hmm. And for the first 2 years or so, it was really just things I would post like randomly. It wasn't like, again, not like this master plan or anything like that. It's kind of like backed into it. And then after like 2 years or so, I started realizing, wow, people are actually reading this. Like there's actually like feedback coming in. And so it kind of morphed from there and grew and organically. And it started really picking up some steam, and I put more effort into it. And that, of course, coincided with us cruising more. And I think the two kind of were intertwined together. And as it turned out, it ends up being my full-time position. I was laid off in 2019, and I thought, man, applying for jobs is the worst. I really don't want to do that again. And I thought, what if I tried to do this full-time, doing the blogging thing? And sure enough, it did, and it's been wonderful ever since.
The rest is history.
Exactly.
So give us a few highlights of your Royal Caribbean cruising experience. Have you tried every ship, every itinerary, any itineraries that you haven't tried, you'd like to try? Favorite small ship, favorite Oasis class ship? I think I know your favorite small ship. I read your blog enough. I think I'll figure that out, but go ahead.
Yeah, the good thing about Royal is I've not done it all. I've not been on every single ship, and I've certainly not done every single itinerary. There's so many cool things out there, whether it is the Australian cruise market. We just talked about Europe. I've only done one European cruise, and I've not done the Med or Western Europe or Greek Isles. So there's plenty to do there. Australia, lots to still do on that front. And then, of course, from the ship standpoint, I'm probably still about, well, I'm going to guess 6 or 8 ships at least I have not been on. So it's nice to have some new frontiers to conquer, so to speak.
What are some of the ships you haven't been on?
Enchantment of the Seas, Spectrum of the Seas, Radiance of the Seas, Voyager of the Seas, Grandeur of the Seas. Most of them are relegated to the Vision class. And then like Spectrum's been in Asia since their debut, so I've not had a chance to go on there. Voyager has always not been in the same area that I want to be in, and I just can't figure out a way to hop on her. I'll figure that one out. So there's a handful of ships that are still out there that I've got to meander around and get back on board.
Mm-hmm. Now, I once asked this of another blogger, and it was like asking who your favorite child is. What's your favorite ship?
Well, I think I'd be lying if I didn't say it was Wonder of the Seas. Wonder, it's the newest and latest. I don't always gravitate towards the newest ship as my favorite, but Wonder really did it for me, and I really love that ship. So Wonder of the Seas, but you alluded to my favorite small ship, and I think I'm going to give you 2 that I really like: Brilliance of the Seas and Mariner of the Seas.
Okay.
Those are 2 ships that, they have a je ne sais quoi about them that just draw me back. It's like I can't sit here, Paul, and be like, blow you away with facts and figures about why Mariner and Brilliance are some of my favorite ships, but they just have that essence to them that really just draws me back. And I have an attachment to them. I really like them.
Yeah, I would have guessed Mariner. I think it was something maybe that you said to me when I interviewed you for the Joy of Cruising several years ago. So,
Absolutely.
speaking of that, when I interviewed you 5 years ago for the Joy of Cruising, I recall you had cruised a few times, you just mentioned it, on Disney before going all in on Royal Caribbean. Do you aspire to cruise on any other cruise lines?
I think so. It's a big world out there, and I think that, as an example, I've already made plans to. This Thanksgiving, we're going to go on Celebrity Apex. So it's our first celebrity cruise, and that makes a lot of sense to me because obviously Celebrity and Royal Caribbean are in the same owned by the
Same
same parent
family.
company. So, right, it's not that far of a departure. But beyond that, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to going on other cruise lines. Part of it was when I had a day job still, I had limited vacation time, so I had to prioritize Royal Caribbean. And now I'm starting to now I know I do this full time, so it's my job. So I have more opportunity to go on a cruise. But granted, my kids' school schedule notwithstanding, I would still like to be able to see what other lines are doing because I feel like a lot of the lines, whether we're talking about Carnival, MSC, Norwegian, you name it, when you talk about the new ships that come out, Paul, it's really interesting to me, kind of the directions. I often joke with people, you can't go wrong with a new ship. Like no matter what line it is, if it's a new ship that's built in the last year or two, I mean, it's tough to have a bad time on a new ship. And that's kind of what kind of intrigues me is to see what other lines are doing, because at the end of the day, it helps provide me context as to where Royal Caribbean is stacking up, what ideas are coming out in the industry. It's one thing to read about them, it's quite another to experience.
Yeah, by definition, a ship that's less than a year old is state of the art. So,
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you'll love Apex. I went on Celebrity Beyond in the fall in that same class. So.
Yes, that's what really drew me in. I mean, before 2020, I started thinking about doing Celebrity, and at that time I was like, we'll do Solstice class ships. But since then, obviously, the Edge class has really been, again, going back to the conversation we just had about new ships. I mean, the Edge class has really been a revelation, and I think it's really captured my attention.
It'll be good to talk to you again, maybe after you go on Apex, because I've only been on a few celebrity shows, I think 3, but after my voyage on Beyond, I tabbed them as the best food at sea. So it'll be interesting to see what you think.
Yes, I'm honestly trying to go in with as open mind as possible. I'm not trying to have preconceived notions. It's hard to do that. It's like going into a movie without reading spoilers or trying to hold it up against a lot of things. I really want to experience it as holistically as I can so that I can, just afterwards draw conclusions and kind of see where that goes.
So many cruise enthusiasts who have not cruised Royal mention a desire to try an Oasis class ship, which, for the listeners, those are the 5 largest ships in the world, one of which, as Matt said, is Wonder. And the second thing those who haven't cruised Royal mention is to visit Perfect Day. I say Perfect Day at Coco Cay, but I just interviewed a Disney Cruise Line blogger who insists it's Perfect Day at Coco Key. But
the proper Bohemian pronunciation is Key, but I will freely admit that in the popular vote, you're winning all by a landslide.
So, but anyway, yeah. So either to cruise an Oasis class ship, visit Perfect Day at Coco Cay, or both. So Wonder is the newest state of the art Oasis class ship and the largest ship in the world as we speak. I know from your YouTube channel you recently sailed Wonder. Give our listeners a quick trip report. What's Wonder of the Seas like?
Wonder, like all the Oasis class ships, is all about the variety of things to do. That's what really makes the Oasis class so interesting. there is so much you can do on board because there's a variety. It's not that you have to do everything, but I just like having choices. Sometimes you feel like doing 800 activities. Sometimes you feel like taking a nap and just kind of hanging out in your cabin. But I really appreciate the variety, whether it is all the dining venues on board, whether it is the activities, the shows. I mean, you've got the aqua theater, the main theater, the ice skating rink. You've got live musical acts all around the ship. You've got water slides. You got a zip line. You have Central Park. You have the boardwalk area. We haven't even talked about what's like on the promenade. I mean, there's just so many cool things to do. And that's what really intrigues me about it, is that you have a lot of variety. And that just, at the end of the day, draws me back. And of course, Perfect Day to Coco Key. I mean, any Wonder of the Seas cruise is going to go there. And it's really an amazing extension of the cruise experience, because it's just it's such an ingrained Royal Caribbean experience. And so it's a great 1-2 punch. And really, when you're looking at a cruise on Wonder of the Seas, I think you're really looking at a ship that is, like you said earlier, it's a brand new ship. It's going to be the latest and greatest, but at the state of the art is, I believe, the phrase you used. But also on top of that, you've just got as much variety of things to do. Variety is the spice of life, and I think for cruisers, it's just great having all those choices.
Now, how soon I know there's another Oasis class ship under construction. How soon before that hits the market?
Well, we're not exactly sure yet. It's going to come out next year, 2024. It's going to be probably summer. I think that's what they've kind of alluded to. But Royal Caribbean has not officially announced where it's sailing from, the exact dates it's going to be sailing. All we know is that delivery of the ship should occur sometime in the spring-ish timeframe. And then beyond that, I really have no idea of what Royal Caribbean's plans are. But at some point in 2024, the 6th Oasis class cruise ship, Utopia of the Seas, will join the fleet.
Okay, Utopia of the Seas.
Yes.
Okay. Now I've heard. What about Icon?
Icon comes out before Utopia, and Icon is a brand new class ship, which is the Icon class, and that comes out in January of 2024. So there are actually going to be 2 new Royal Caribbean cruise ships in 2024.
Wow. Okay. I thought Icon was another Oasis class.
No, it's a brand new class of ship, the Icon class. It is going to be even bigger. So you're going to have to update all those articles in the book, Paul, because the Oasis class will no longer be the biggest anymore when Icon comes out. But yeah, Icon is going to be the first of at least 3 that we know about Icon class cruise ships. Again, Icon coming out in January of 24.
Yeah, speaking of updating all the books, on the newest book, The Joy of Cruising Again, so I talked about my return to cruising after the COVID lockdown, shutdown, whatever.
Yep.
And so I said, I want to pick something special. And I'm cruise line agnostic, so I jump around. But I decided to book Symphony of the Seas because it was the largest ship in the world. And so I booked it, and the cruise came, and it was wonderful, and my eyes watered getting back on the ocean, except Symphony was no longer the largest ship in the world because, Wonder had launched. So you seem to be constantly working, Matt. Blogs, YouTube, live streams. Besides all of that, what are some projects coming up at the Royal Caribbean blog?
Boy, I mean, what you just described seems to be pretty darn busy, Paul. I got to say, that's kind of what we look at. Part of it, we have an ever expanding team, which is really nice. A couple of full timers and some contractors who help obviously cover the industry. And really what we're trying to do, Paul, is expand more and cover it more. On RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, we now have coverage of celebrity cruises. We're still growing that. It's a work in progress, as I would describe it. And then we have another website, cruise.blog, which covers the entire industry. And so we're trying to, provide more information, more advice, more tips, just more coverage of what cruising is all about to everyone out there. And it's kind of exciting because it's like, as I mentioned, I started full time with Royal Caribbean Blog in 2019, and that was in October. So if you do the math, I had about 4 normal months before everything shut down, and then we had to readjust, right? And I feel like 2023 is finally feels normal-ish, I guess you want to call it that. in the sense that it feels more like 2019 than the past couple of years certainly have. And so for that reason, it's like it feels like we're moving past all that stuff for the last couple of years, and now we're ready to really, conquer and tackle what is out there, and it's exciting. It's really cool because I wake up in the morning and I think, well, geez, what am I gonna, what cruise related subjects can we tackle today? And that's exciting. I like that.
Not to bring up bad news, but since you mentioned it, during the shutdown, I mean, what did a guy like you do? You must have been climbing the walls.
Yeah, it was. I tell people it was a lot like we kind of. I think a lot of us pivoted towards more news than evergreen content. Instead of talking about should you get the drink package, it was more of like it was almost like politics. I imagine like a horse race, right? CDC, cruise line announcements, like what's new today kind of situation. What's changed since last night, and that was a major part of it because initially you realize nobody was searching for the stuff that people were searching for before. So now we had to adjust and keep up with the episodes. Everybody wanted to know when will cruise ships restart? What line is going to restart first? How many people are going to be on board? What are the protocols going to be? Who's going to be allowed on board? All those kinds of questions were really the focal point of what everyone was looking for. And so by late 2020 into 2021, it really felt like an election cycle where it was just like a horse race of, oh, the CDC said this today, this governor said this today, Royal Caribbean said this today, the port of whatever said that today. And it was kind of just, trying to follow along and, of course, try to draw some conclusions. I mean, the prediction game was anything but easy in terms of when it would all restart. But that's really what it became until about, I would say, early 2022. It started to become more normal again in the sense that it was, people were starting to get back into, okay, well, do I need to get a drink package? That was kind of more the predominant question than, the restart plans, which was great. But it was definitely an adjustment. And I hope we never go through anything remotely like that again because it was awful.
Beyond cruising, did you try anything different? Grow a pandemic garden, run a marathon?
I went back to skiing actually. In 2020, I hadn't gone skiing since I was in college, I think. And I wasn't comfortable flying, but I realized there was a ski resort is a strong word, in Western North Carolina, which is driving distance from Florida, about 10 hours or so. So I went skiing, took my oldest daughter for the first time and her first time. I'd been not since, college, and it was great. And you know what, Paul, I've gone back now 2 more times every year, 2020, 21, and 22, and I have the finger injury to prove it. That it was, and I love it. It's a great escape. I have posted blog posts from the ski lift on my way up, but it's been a nice. That was, I guess, a silver lining that I really rediscovered my love for skiing because it was fun.
Wow, you just turned me on to something because as you might remember when I interviewed you for the first book, I lived in Florida also, and I now live in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, check it out. It's over it's over by Boone.
I never heard of that. Okay, great. So, what was your return to cruising like? What was your first cruise after the shutdown?
Adventure of the Seas out of Nassau when Royal Caribbean restarted out of North America. I did a back-to-back on Adventure of the Seas out of Nassau, and that was really interesting because it was kind of like going to a high school reunion. I've never actually been to a high school reunion, but I imagine that's what it was like because it was just like seeing a lot of people that you hadn't seen in a little bit, and you wanted to catch up and kind of. It's like, Paul, the Bruce Springsteen song "Glory Days." In the song is about how all they can ever talk about is glory days, which of course, back when they were in whatever high school or whatever. And that's what it was like. It was like all we could talk about was cruising and being back on board. And it was magical. It was really like like you woke up from a dream almost. I mean, there's still obviously reminders of everything, but it was such a revelation, and it started the progression of cruising restarting.
Yeah, I've interviewed a handful of creators who were on that cruise. Not surprisingly.
Yeah, it was the I seem to recall, I don't remember if Celebrity restarted first, but it was among the first cruises to restart. In that first sailing, Paul, there were a lot of vloggers on board, a lot of content creators, and it was just so cool. I met Sherry from Cruise Tips TV on that second sailing because I had never met her before, and that was kind of a neat opportunity. So it's just like that's why I felt like almost like a high school reunion because it was like, oh look, it's so and so, and that person's now doing this, and it was just it was a great reunion in a sense.
Um, Now, I know that several bloggers and podcasters have done group cruises. I know that you've done that. Talk
Yeah.
about that. Any near-term plans to do another Royal Caribbean blog cruise?
Yeah, we do 2 group cruises a year. Actually, the Navigator of the Seas cruise I mentioned at the beginning of the recording here. That's our first group cruise of the year. So we're doing Navigator of the Seas out of Los Angeles in June, and then we have out of Boston, Serenade of the Seas to Canada, New England. Never done that itinerary, so I get to check that off my bucket list. And then we're doing Panama Canal next year on Rhapsody of the Seas.
Oh,
We're doing
wow.
Icon of the Seas as well in the summer of 24. So like I said, 2 group cruises a year, and more information about them is at royalcaribbeanblog.com/events.
I was just going to ask you, did you still have availability? And
Oh,
if
yes.
so, tell our listeners what you just did. So how can, in terms of following Royal Caribbean Blog in general on social media and the web, tell our listeners how we can keep up with Matt.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously, royalcaribbeanblog.com is the focal point of everything, but we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. And usually, if you search for Royal Caribbean Blog, if I did my job correctly, you should find us over there. It's pretty easy to discover that. But YouTube, Facebook, and of course, royalcaribbeanblog.com. And all the links are on Royal Caribbean Blog. So if you can't find anything, start with the website and you can kind of jump off from there.
Mm-hmm. One more question about the blog before I move on to the future. And this is a kind of a fanboy question. Does Royal Caribbean communicate with you? I mean, do they know you? Obviously, they know you, who you are. You're a star to us in the cruise community, but to Royal Caribbean, what does Royal Caribbean think about Matt Hochberg?
They're very supportive, to be perfectly honest with you. They've been very supportive for a really long time. I've always asked to be treated just like any other media outlet, not to be, to get any kind of, well, I wouldn't mind preferential treatment, but I don't get it. It's just more that I'm not. I try to also convey that I'm not some guy who lives in his parents' basement, who does this I try to do it as professionally as I can, and I ask to be treated like any other media outlet out there. And they've been very supportive in terms of inviting me to special events and providing coverage, news announcements, things of that nature. So they definitely know who I am, and they definitely very supportive of what we do, which is great to see that. I mean, it's really rewarding that you not only get certain access, but also that they like what you do and they appreciate what I bring because I can bring certain things that they can't do because for a variety of reasons, or rather they don't want to do, but they can appreciate the value that it brings, which is nice.
Well, thank you for that insight. Let's talk about the future. What do you have booked?
Oh boy, well I've got
you've already mentioned a few things, but
yeah, I've got Navigator of the Seas booked for out of Mexico. I have a weekend cruise before in September for just a little week. That's the nice thing about living in Florida, Paul, as you know. You can hop on a little weekend cruise and take the family. Weekend in the Bahamas. We've got Serenade of the Seas out of Boston and Canada, New England. We're doing when Allure of the Seas comes over to Port Canaveral. We've got a little short cruise on there. It's funny, Paul. I did a YouTube video at the start of the year, and I said I'm not doing a cruise. I did one cruise a month. I think I actually did more than that last year, 22. I said I'm not doing that again. I'm pretty sure I'm on track for that again for 2023. It's you get home for about
that. It sounds like a good problem to have, Matt.
Yes, it's a great problem to have. Because you get home for about 2 or 3 weeks, and you feel really good. You're like, no, it's you got good internet, you've got lots of room again. It's laundry. But after about 2 or 3 weeks, you start getting that itch. It's like, man, I could really go for the Windjammer buffet right now. Man, I could really go for a day in Cozumel. And you see other people's posts. And it's about every 4 to 6 weeks, I end up more or less on a cruise, which is fun. But yeah, we've got about a handful handful of cruises left in the year, and you may book something, randomly at the last minute. That's a nice thing. But again, living in Florida, you can afford to do that kind of thing. So I try to mix it up as much as I can, not try to just constantly do the same, 3 or 4 night cruises that are out there. With kids' schedules, a little more difficult than you might imagine. But we've got a number of cruises coming up. And as I mentioned, next year we're doing Panama Canal. I've never done that before. That's really cool. So we've got some neat things coming up, and I'm pretty excited for you. That's the best part about cruising. It's not always just the same thing.
Now let's talk about longer term in the future. What's on your bucket list?
Oh, well, I definitely want to do more Europe. I got a taste for it. And like you, Paul, I think it's just very much intriguing. I think for me, what opened my eyes more than anything was that the flights, while nobody wants that on an airplane for 8, 9 hours, it wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't as bad necessarily as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I got extremely lucky. I didn't get jet lagged on either leg. I was like, what happened? What is this? I'm sleeping. Like, it was very strange. So I don't know if I got lucky or it is what it is. But anyway, I would love to do more European cruises. I think that not only is that a big component of the cruise market, but more importantly to myself, I think it's really interesting. And there's so many cool places I would love to visit. So I think Europe is a big draw for me, especially coming up, with the with when my kids get a little bit older, they can appreciate now, I think, the history and culture and significance of going to Europe, as opposed to it's just another beach kids kind of experience.
Let's shift gears, Matt. Let me ask you a couple of light or fun cruise questions. The first is really it's for me to get some ideas. I just went on a 16-day cruise, and I never ordered the same drink twice. So, so what's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
Well, lava flow with Kraken rum is probably my favorite drink, although admittedly it's hard to, there's a lot of calories in that drink, but it's very good. And I like that quite a bit. But you got to ask for the Kraken rum. If you say lava flow, which is the name of the drink, they're going to give you some regular old swill of rum, which is not the same thing. The Kraken, which is this dark spice rum, really makes, that's my favorite food. I mean, I love sushi, Paul. It's one of those, I talked about the calories, the other drink, and you feel full. Sushi, I mean, I could eat a ton of sushi and never feel like bloated, if that makes sense. Like, it's just like I can feel full and satisfied, but it's a different kind. I really love sushi hibachi. That is fantastic. So I think I go with sushi hibachi, however you want, maybe a combination of both, as my favorite.
What's your most memorable or funny or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I have embarrassing. I don't mind sharing. I've shared this story before. So, like when I first started blogging, Paul, the blog was not anywhere near where it is today, but I knew people who knew who I was. And I was on a cruise ship, and I'm walking down the Royal Promenade, and when you can see somebody coming towards you, they're coming to you. They're not like walking past you. And I was like, oh, here it comes. Someone's going to recognize me for who I am. And this is it. My moment finally. Someone's going to recognize me. And the guy comes walking to me and goes, "Sir, your fly is down." And I was so embarrassed because my mind, I had these lofty expectations, and now it's like the bottom of the barrel. Like, oh God,
that brought you down to size. It could have been worse. He could have said, "Hey, Matt from the Royal Caribbean blog, your fly is down."
Flies down. That's true. Maybe he didn't recognize me. Even better. That's a good point. I never thought about it that way.
The third question, and it's kind of an oddball question because it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with cruising. I know that you have a huge and fervent following, and let me just say welcome to the Royal Caribbean blog fans who are listening. Share one thing that my listeners and your fans don't know about Matt.
Wow. Boy, what they don't know. Well, I think they know about the skiing thing. That would have been something that I don't really talk about all that much. I guess, the only thing that jumps to my mind, Paul, is that I think outside of blogging, I really don't do a whole lot much else. People always talk about, you must, I don't know, I'm not the life of the party by any means. If you meet me on a cruise ship, I'll certainly talk to you and I'll do whatever. But it's one thing to talk on camera. And I don't even mind singing on camera because I can't see the people that are watching me. But you'll never find me like on karaoke or anything like that, because that's a whole different ball game. Singing in front of the camera doesn't scare me. Singing in front of a live audience, yeah, that's a little bit much. So the internet is a great option for my persona, but in real life, I think I'm a lot more laid back than you might otherwise imagine.
Mm-hmm. Are you an introvert?
I think so. I think more often than not, I am. I mean, I think when people say introvert, they assume that I shy away from public gatherings. I don't mind it. I'm just not the life of the parties, whatever that means. Like I'm in between, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, a lot of us creators, podcasters, blog, whatever, I'm learning are introverts. You strike me as someone.
Yeah.
Another blogger mentioned this phrase, which I like. You're an introvert, but you play an extrovert very well.
I certainly, again, I try to be as social as I can, but like I said, it's not I don't like talking about myself that much, all this podcast notwithstanding. I don't like, I don't walk into the room and, hey, everyone, welcome. I'm not that kind of a guy. I'll come over. Hey, it's Paul. Good to see you, Paul. Shake your hand, that kind of a thing. So I think I'm maybe introvert plus. Let's call it that.
Mm-hmm. Finally, Matt, we're going to put you to work. Please announce this week's winner of a copy of either The Joy of Cruising or Cruising Interrupted.
Well, it looks like the winner is Robert Alford. Congratulations.
Great. Robert is a member of the Joy of Cruising podcast Facebook group, so I will catch up to Robert after this episode airs. Matt, thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule. I've enjoyed talking to you, and obviously consider you a leader in the cruise community, so I fully expect to have you back if you'll come back sometime in a not too distant future. And continued best wishes to your powerhouse blog and podcast, the Royal Caribbean Blog.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I would love to join you again. Thank you for the very, very kind words. What you're doing is incredible, and it's a great it's a great look into the world of not only cruising, but how people cover the world of cruising. I find it interesting as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. As they say, I'll see you on the ocean.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted can be ordered at the link on the joyofcruisingpodcast.com, each for $16.99 plus shipping. Order the soon-to-be-released The Joy of Cruising again, also at thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com for $18.99. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. Again, the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast. Enter to win a copy of The Joy of Cruising or Cruising Interrupted while supplies last at thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or both to increase your chance to win. A winner will be announced on each show. Please leave us a review and tell a friend about us. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed the brief escape to the ocean. See you next week. Exciting news, passionate cruisers. The Joy of Cruising Again book was just released. Order the ebook at your favorite online retailer. The paperback can be ordered by copying the web address listed at the podcast website, www.thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code Joy of Cruising Podcast to get $4 off. We think you'll enjoy the new book as much as Paul enjoyed writing it, and we would love to hear your comments at the Joy of Cruising Again Facebook page or at the Joy of Cruising Instagram page. Thank you.